unless Nolan said, I'm not coming with you, I'm going to go to the island and run the length of the island, which is like 10, 12 miles long. Unless he said something like that, he was with other people when they left.
There's a great possibility that he was, and there's also a possibility that he could have wandered off and drowned.
Do you have confidence that there's going to be a real answer about what they found in that autopsy? Because there's a disconnect for me.
The average person thinks that, oh, they're impaneling the grand jury. That must mean that there are suspects in a crime that will be presented. And that's not the case. What it is that they got to get all the evidence together, and therefore, in a impartial process, they go, we push all of this to a grand jury no matter what the circumstance is, so we're consistent across the board. And it could be come to a point where there's nothing there. That was just a drowning. I want to tell you guys about Shinergy. If you're looking for an energy drink that's clean, 75 milligrams of caffeine, nootropics that help you with focus so you don't crash and have all that crazy stuff in your drinks. You don't need to do that. That's over time that's going to destroy you. But we didn't just create an energy drink because we care about your overall energy and health. So we created an energy drink and a night drink. One that helps you go to sleep, wake up with energy, and the other one gives you sustainable energy throughout the day. So if you're looking for a company that agrees with your values, American-based, American-made, American customer service, look no further. ShinergyLife.com has you covered. And then we have a money-back guarantee. You take the product that don't work for you, we'll get your money back.
What is your best guess about what happened in terms of the timeline, which you can look at Brandon's social media and his YouTube page? He's done a lot of timeline work about what matters and what doesn't, because there's a big news hook right now, which is, wow, that distress call. Maybe the distress call is related to why Nolan Wells disappeared. Now, there's a huge problem with that, which is the distress call happened far away from the island. So I don't know how his body wound up all the way back at the island. But what do you make of the timeline and this distress call that's getting all this attention?
Yeah, so first, my impression of the young kids, boys, I'm just like you, man. These 18-year-old, you barely know what's going on in the world, but these young men were very respectful, great kids. They seem like Nolan, and now I can see why Nolan would want to hang out with these kids. Their parents were incredible. They were very respectful to their parents. They were very accomplished. Many of them were athletes and athletes in college. So these kids were a group of really good quality kids. Like, that's what I got from them. When they would talk to me, the way because sometimes you can see a lot about parenting and how kids are raised when you are in a position like me and you kind of on the outside watching interactions. And these young boys were incredibly respectful. And I think it's a Southern thing too. But I found them to be very authentic, very genuine. And that's my first impression of them. And the timeline, this is why I believe that Nolan may have drowned, and more likely than one of those young men killing him. I do have a third theory that would lead to criminal activity, but I don't have it locked in yet. So I'll start from the beginning. These boys and Nolan were really, really good friends. They showed me pictures of them at prom. I mean, they told me they hang out with him 3 or 4 times a week when they're back for the summer. They've been knowing each other since middle school. They spent a night over each other's houses. The parents, reiterated the same thing. So it appears that all of these good friends, which they went last year on 4th of July at Horn Island, they almost go out there fishing every year. All the time they go fishing. So he takes me out there, and they articulated that they went out with a group of people, which means it wasn't just Nolan and 4 white boys. It was 3 boats full of kids, like about 30 of them. They went out there to an island where all of their other friends that they grew up with, and everybody's out there having a good time. And these young boys out there drinking, and you know how they do it. And it appears that there was an emergency on the boat. The boat was beginning to sink. They needed to get it out of there, or the boat was going to sink right there at Horn Island, which is like 7 to 10 miles from the freaking mainland. So this is a tragedy if they lose their whole boat out there. And so the boat is beginning to sink. They said that they had did the distress call. They were telling Nolan, get on the boat. This is at 4:30. And they weren't too far from Horn Island. They weren't far out. They told me they were probably like a quarter mile out, which is still in visible eyesight from the hundreds of boats that are there, thousands.
So they said as they started to pull away, they noticed they had a problem?
No.
Were they sitting on the boat and they said, we're taking on water while they were still anchored up?
Yeah. They would notice they were taking on water while they were still anchored, and what Warren told me was that he think because there was so many people on the boat that more people than should have been on the boat, it began to sink, and he gave me all this detailed boat jargon, which I have no idea. I've never been on a boat, maybe 3 times in my life, and so he was just telling me that that's what had happened, and they thought it was, and they needed to get the water out of the boat. They need to unplug it and do all this stuff and get it on the high ground and drain it, and once they get it going, it'll pull the water out. All this stuff he was explaining to me, which I have no idea. He literally showed me on the boat, kind of what he was saying. So I got a small understanding of it. But he was saying that they yelled at Nolan, hey, man, get on the effing boat, man. We got to go. Like, we're sinking. We got to get out of here so we can save the boat. Nolan was hanging out with the girl, Katie, and he had stayed behind. Now, Tristan, which is the black kid that I interviewed, he said he saw him with this girl. The girl, I saw her text messages. They sent me her text messages to I believe it was Warren. And she had reiterated that Nolan never got back on the boat. She didn't see him get back on the boat he came on. And also that she heard them yelling for him to get on the boat, and he didn't. Now, her story is it's a gaps in there because it's hard to tell when she disengaged with Nolan. But from what I know, they left without Nolan. Which and your audience probably knows, was the big crux of everything. Why did they leave him behind at the island?
Yes.
So if they either left him or they didn't leave him. So with the idea that they left him seems to be consistent. They left. They said that they were going, and it's not abnormal for friends to go and come on different boats.
Right. And they didn't leave him alone. The initial
No. He was there with hundreds of
consideration was you left him on an island 10 miles off. What'd you think was going to happen? There were like 100. There were hundreds of boats there. There were lots of people.
Yes.
So did they give you a sense of Nolan wanting to stay behind? Drunk, out of character, because he was with a girl, that they were pissed off because they had to go, but they were more worried about the boat than him staying? Like, what was the vibe that you picked up?
Yeah. It was that what they were telling me, and there's a few boys kind of reiterate this, that Nolan was really feeling this girl, and they didn't know her. They had never really seen her before. And they were looking at their buddy. You probably know this, Chris. I mean, you've been in a place where you look at your buddy and he's kind of super interested in the girl, and you're like, bro, you really like, you really hang out with this girl. It's a bunch of women here. We all having a good time. You kind of interested in, and Tristan told me in the interview that he just looked at him and laughed at him, because he was having a good time with this girl. And so they didn't think it was anything abnormal. He's hanging out with a girl.
Because they didn't have any concerns he couldn't get home.
Yeah, no. It was no concern whatsoever, because some of the people that came in on the boat with them on the same boat that was sinking did not leave on that same boat. So it was 3 different boats, multiple friend groups, and you got to think Nolan could have been going back on the boat with the girl. I mean, these people, these young men are grown. This is not they're not babies. And you hanging out with a girl, you probably want to keep hanging out with her, and you may go back to the island with her, whatever the case may be. So they said it was nothing nefarious. They didn't think nothing of it. They told him to get on a boat because they had to leave. And he was like, "No, I'm good. I'll just get a ride back with somebody else."
And the phone, him leaving the phone, is that a function of him just forgetting in the moment? I get why you wouldn't take a phone with you into the water, even if you're bouncing from boat to boat. I get it. I know that kids don't want to leave their phones, but I'm on a boat all the time. All right, I got water behind me. We're water babies where I live. Kids don't bring their phones into the water. It's a mistake.
In this situation, this is much more so. And the reason is I think people are not being able to put together visually what it looks like out there. You have your phone and stuff on a boat. You're next to the boat. You're not like necessarily floating off somewhere way away from the boats. It's tons of boats. So what you do is you hang out in the water, you drink, you're talking or whatever, and then when you want to do something with your phone, you just go to the boat, which is sometimes within arm distance or sometimes within several feet, and you get on the boat and do your Snapchat or whatever you got to do, and then you leave it on the boat because you're in water to your chest. People are not going to be holding their phone like this. And then the reception out there is kind of spotty. So it's not like they got Wi-Fi out there and everybody can just upload stuff. So a lot of people are not really interested in their phones. They've gotten away from the mainland.
So the phone on the boat was never going to be a dispositive fact. It seemed like that early on, but we were thinking land-based, not water-based. Then what did you pick up of? What's your best sense at this point, preliminary as it is, of so they say, all right, you want to stay with the girl. How does Katie help? You were saying that it's not clear when she disengaged. Is there anything that you now know about what happened once they leave?
Yeah, it's nothing. It's still a big gap because a lot of his friends that knew him that we're communicating with, they were gone. And the only person left behind that we know of that can attest to any of this is that girl, Katie. And I saw some of her text messages, but we reached out to them to try to see if she can put some more context because everybody's saying that he was hugged up with Katie. Like literally, Warren said she was cradled in his arms. Like, he's feeling her. They feeling each other. So at what point do they separate? And at what time? Because the boys left around 4:30. Trayston left before the boys left because he got into a fight and his uncle made him leave and they got on a boat and left. And so all of this is going on. A lot of the boys that were with him had already left. Then the question is, who saw Nolan after this? How late was Nolan at the island from somebody's visual? And the fact that Katie, and I'm not saying she did anything wrong. I just have not had a chance to talk to her and get her context enough to rule out the fact that she may have been the last person to see him alive.
Did she talk to the cops?
I'm not sure, but I think she did.
They say they have 60 interviews.
Yes. So with that being said, I think that everybody
60 interviews. There's nobody not to agitate you about Ben Crump, but he is right, and so is the family, that somebody knows something, right? Because unless Nolan said, I'm not coming with you, I'm going to go to the island and run the length of the island, which is like 10, 12 miles long. Unless he said something like that, he was with other people when they left.
There's a great possibility that he was, and there's also a possibility that he could have wandered off and because the way they described it, and people have drowned there often. Like I think they said like 3 or 4 people per year drown right there at Horn Island. And it's because of the tide. And it's a weird little situation on the west side of the island where they were at. And they were showing it to me. And it get rough. And there's an undercurrent.
They call it the washing machine.
Right. That's what they said, a washing machine. And so no matter how good of a swimmer you are, you get caught in the middle of that, you can drown. And when you're in an environment where there's hundreds of people out, there's music blaring, people are drunk, it's a possibility. I'm not saying this is the more likely possibility that I believe happened, but he could have wandered off to go pee, because they were saying that when you pee, you don't want to pee in front of everybody, so you kind of wander off. And there's a drop off. If you get caught in there and you go under or you pass out because you're drunk, everybody's distracted. You can be gone like this and nobody ever know. But it does seem suspicious to me that nobody saw him. Now, with hundreds of people there. But here's another thing that I think, which is the problem why I think Benjamin Crump and them should have never been involved in this. Because now I'm getting the sense that people are afraid to come out and say anything, because even if you saw Nolan but you had nothing to do with it, you don't want to tell nobody publicly. You'll tell the police, but you don't want to tell anybody publicly because you will be masqueraded as the white person who killed Nolan Wells. And just like these boys are experiencing, even though they have an alibi that they weren't there when whatever happened to them happened. So I think that the community and people that are out there are scared. Now, they may have told the police.
Well, there's got to be some other black folks and some Latino folks. It wasn't all white people who were there.
100%. And this is the thing. This is another thing, Chris, why I'm like, well, why would they jump to the race thing? Why don't they ask the black kids what happened to him? I mean, he was out there with all kind of friend groups. So why is the black kids okay with not knowing what Nolan did? And they left him too. If somehow they have no recollection.
Because it's Mississippi. That's why.
But
that's why.
Mississippi.
That's the cultural precept that blacks have been systemically discriminated against in that state egregiously. And that's why.
But here's the caveat to that. I agree. I know that has happened. That has happened all over the nation. But black people have also been the contributing factors of murdering other black people too, more recent in history. So, but this is why people can't prejudge things without the evidence. Because what is the more likely thing that will happen to you? More than likely, you'll get killed by somebody that look like you. More than likely, the beef and the conflict will be with another black person versus white people in most cities, period. However, we know the historical context, but you can't produce that forever. You can't say forever and a day because I'm in Mississippi, if a white person do anything, it's got to be a racial undertone. I don't think it's fair because then what happens? There may be an actual suspect that's not black. I mean, that's not white, that they're not looking at because they're saying it must be a racial thing. And it could be a conflict thing. It could be a drug thing. It could be somebody getting too drunk and Nolan passing out or falling off the boat, and now people are scared to say anything because they feel responsible. But one thing that I think people should realize is that it must have happened near Horn Island, because the authorities are saying because his body washed up on Horn Island and the way the current works, it must have happened somewhere in the area, like right in the area. It couldn't have happened offshore too far because he wouldn't have washed up on land. So, but I just wish that people would slow down and let the investigation do its thing. And here's another thing, Chris, about the deletion of the phone. You know, I don't think that the family and Benjamin Crump is being honest about this. One thing people need to know is there's no such thing as deleting stuff out of the phone, because police can forensically extract anything from your phone. It never gets deleted. It just gets overwritten on the phone to you. Forensic extraction will extract the core of everything that has ever existed on your phone. So if that was the case, the authorities will find that out and it will be transparent.
Do you have confidence that there's going to be a real answer about what they found in that autopsy? Because there's a disconnect for me. If the first autopsy showed drowning, okay, in the lungs, and there's no sign of anything else, why go to a grand jury? So the fact that they are impaneling one, how do you read that?
Yeah, what they've come out to the public and said is that this is typical. No matter what happens, it's not like this is somehow an admission or a building up of a case, like they have suspects or not. Any one of these suspicious deaths that they don't have a conclusive answer to, they have to bring all of their materials to a grand jury as a form of process. So the average person thinks that, oh, they're impaneling the grand jury, that must mean that there are suspects in a crime that will be presented. And that's not the case. What it is that they got to get all the evidence together, and therefore an impartial process. They go, we push all of this to a grand jury no matter what the circumstance is, so we're consistent across the board. And it could be come to a point where there's nothing there, that was just a drowning. So this is process and routine. This is not necessarily an indication that there was a crime. I'm pretty confident. I don't have any reason not to be confident, right? I mean, I'm pretty confident that they're going to find out, or they're going to be transparent about what they know. I'm not very confident that they're going to get real answers from people about what happened to Nolan. But I am confident that they're going to present to the public everything they have. I would be more confident if Benjamin Crump was never involved and the parents had come together as a community and said, let's come together as a community and find out what happened to my son. All his friends, they all get together. If they did that, I think it would be more conducive for regular people in the populace to say, I did see him at 6:30. I didn't see nothing happen, but I saw him at 6:30. Or somebody say, I did see him at 8 on a boat, that boat over there. But when you start interjecting these things in here, the person who did something to him ain't gonna say nothing. The person who may have seen it now don't want to say nothing because they don't want to be accused of killing Nolan Wells. So, but I'm confident that, because they're being transparent too. I mean, Benjamin Crump had an opportunity for a second autopsy, which they did, and they presented it, and it was inconclusive initially, waiting on toxicology and different things like that, which is probably the same results as what happened with the state. It's nothing different. It's the same soup warmed over. And in the phone extraction. So the police is going to extract Nolan Wells' phone and see if there's any tampering or deletion that could be tied to some nefarious means. And Nolan Wells' family will be a part of that, which was agreed by the state and their attorneys. They're being transparent. I don't think they have anything to hide.
I don't have any problem with their decision after that initial thing. The police side, except for the governor coming out and saying something that showed that he's paying attention, but he didn't know anything. They're not putting out any more word until they go through their process. I'm okay with that because as long as it all comes out eventually, I don't need them to compete with the family's attorney or go point for point or any of that. I understand that, even though I'm in the media and I want as much access as I can get, as soon as I can get, I get that determination. Do you know whether or not the friends are cooperating in terms of their cell phones?
Oh, I would have to ask specifically, but they told me we did everything the cops wanted us to do. We cooperated right away. Many of them took lie detector tests. It wasn't technically a lie detector test traditionally. It's another form of like a cognitive lie detecting thing. It's not called a lie detector test. That's why I say a lie detector test equivalent. But it's the same proficiency. It's maybe more accurate. But every boy except one took the lie detector test, and they passed. And they all cooperated with the police right away. And I'm assuming, I want to verify, and I think my team is listening to me, maybe we can verify, that I think Nolan and all them gave their phones over too. So
I got to tell you, and this will upset people. As an attorney, and having done this as long as I have, there's no way you're getting my son's phone. There's no way he's taking any kind of cognitive anything. And I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
I would be suspicious that when you people, meaning law enforcement and the government, if you want to make a case, you're going to make a case. You're just not going to make it on my son because he said something that you can take out of context, or he got flummoxed by something, or he has some sense of guilt because he loved this kid. And he feels like, man, everybody's so angry. I must have fucked up. You know, I'm not putting that on my barely baked son who's 18, 20, whatever they are. I got one of those animals in my house. I've got a 20-year-old boy in my house. And I could absolutely, you're not getting it. You want to come? Come. But you're not, I'm not giving it to you.
Yes.
I'll tell you that. And I know that sounds like I have something to hide. That's not why I'd be doing it. Even if he said to me, Dad, here's exactly what happened. I'm okay. I'd be like, I understand. I understand you're okay. I also understand why they're asking and what they're looking for, and I'm not giving it to you.
You're 1,000%, and I'm the most pro cop person on the planet, but there is no way that anybody should talk to law enforcement without an attorney. Like, even if you, because what happens is, Chris, is that sometimes law enforcement can be shady, right? They're
allowed to lie. They are allowed to lie. Yeah.
We lie to people all the time. I mean, and we don't lie to you because we want to arrest the wrong person. We lie to you because we want to figure out how to get to the right answer. And people were mad at some of these boys because initially none of them had an attorney. They got attorneys later. Warren had an attorney right away, and it probably because his stepmother was a judge and they understand his law process. So they were like, no, you're going to get an attorney first, so they don't lock you in and say something and you accidentally say something, or they take some of your stuff out of context and you go to jail for something you didn't do. But the other boys did all of this, communicated with police, lie detector tests and all this, no attorney. They later got representation. And so people are like jumping into the gun and saying, oh, why did they get attorneys? They must have did something wrong.
I totally understand why you would think that. I
but
do.
in reality,
I get it,
no.
I'll tell you where I learned this lesson while we're in share mode.